Good morning. My apologies, we're having slight technical hitches here, last minute. Well, I would like to thank the Department of Culture, especially Anna Bozoms and Caixa Forum Girona, for their kind invitation, for having wanted us to be here and address you in this session. The title that the previous speaker just read, Mr. Joan Pluma, about myself is, well, is probably too long. It belongs to an R&D project, as the title of the project, and it's so long and tedious and difficult to pronounce, says the speaker. But still, well, I would rather tell you about augmented reality, bearing in mind that all of us here probably have seen a lot of augmented reality. Probably you are doing it, you know what it is, so I'm not going to share with you many examples, even if in the abstract I mentioned that I would share examples with you. But I gave it a second thought because I think that it's maybe not the best thing for me to do. I would rather go a little bit further than that, a little bit deeper into the concept of augmented reality. Let me approach it from the standpoint of culture, but basically focusing on heritage and museums, which is the discipline that we cover in our research group in our university. And I'm going to give you any examples among other things because I've seen that other examples will be presented, and, well, my colleague later on will present something later on, so I don't want to spoil anything. She's the expert, I'm the old guy, and she's the young girl, so there's this huge gap and this huge barrier sometimes when it comes to technology. Museology is some sort of intermediation between objects and subjects. So between us and the object, there's an intermediation there. And museums, we as museums, we have spent about a century trying to find new elements for this intermediation, to make things understandable, to get things closer to the audience, things that we believe may be valuable for the audience. So in order to achieve that, let's see if it works. Let's test the system. Here it is. So in order to do this intermediation, we've thought of so many things: models, multiple projection systems, elements that were literally around us, mechanic components, boards and panels and screens, photography-based resources. So we've done pretty much everything, even human interventions now and again, performances, theater performances, in order to get the notion, the thing, closer to the audience. And that has taken us over a century. So augmented reality and the digital systems have, well, they are there, and like a hurricane, the threat is there, like they're going to put an end to everything. We can now go back to showing, to displaying the object in the museum without any intermediation. I mean, we can go back to the 18th century, and there was no intermediation of the object then, because, of course, the this player and the viewer, they were on the same page, so no intermediation was necessary. Many museologists, experts, scholars of museology, they would advocate that the object is the object and it's self-explanatory and it needs no mediation. Okay, we can go back in time. We can forget about this intermediation because there are elements that replace this now. Out of all these digital elements, true augmented reality is the most valuable one. I state here that it is the flagship among apps because it's the most surprising one, because it's more playful, helps us play around with the resources. It is what we use when we really want to surprise. And one of the functions of museology, apart from, of course, informing the public and decode, it's about surprising also the public. So that is something that helps us in this respect. I would say I'm not exaggerating if I say that classical museology is coming to its end. This concept, dolls and toys, and I'm referring to sculpture. I'm not being very fair here, but wax, these sort of things, we don't need it anymore. And what's even most important, when we work with applications, I'm going to refer to applications more than on-site devices, because the cell phone, the smartphone is everywhere. Usually it's the user who's paying for it. So it's not just that all the classical resources are now replaced by a mobile device that's easy to handle and it's apparently more efficacious, but it's paid by the user. And we can change it as we go. It's not easy to change or replace a set of sculptures in a museum. You can ask any museum director, ask the wax museum director. It's difficult, it's costful. So in this case, things become so much easier. So we are faced with a system that, without a shadow of a doubt, I think I'm clear about that, will just destroy all of this, and the classical museology will disappear from the museums. New things will appear. It's the end of a generation of museologists that would advocate precisely the opposite, intermediation and performances, settings, scenographies. We've created all this, and it's the end. Now, whom does this all affect? I took this title, the app generation, and I took this from Howard Gardner. I wanted to refer to a guru, Howard Gardner, who's recently published in February a book entitled The App Generation. He did this together with a colleague of his. He's probably in his 60s and his colleague is in her 20s. So the book is some sort of combination. It's about a debate between the two of them. It's interesting because it's the vision of the old psychologist, one of the most privileged minds in America in the latest century, and the way he sees all of this. It's not that he's a new kid on the block. I mean, he is knowledgeable about the applications field. And Gardner, what he does is to define this generation, to classify it, maybe, if possible. It's an interesting book, so take a look at it if you have the chance. An adolescent, a teenager, told me once something that Gardner states in his book. He says, you use your computer when you need to work, in order to work, like, with disdain. What you do is this. And I said, well, what do you do with it? And he said, everything. I do everything with my computer. So let's think about that. He said, I do everything with my computer. Everything? Okay. When he says computer, and of course today, computer and this what is the difference? It's the size of the screen, right? The difference between a computer and a smartphone. So when the youngsters say computer, they're right when they say that they do pretty much everything with it. And I don't think it's worthwhile reminding what we can do with this little device. Pretty much everything, right? The the greatest change, let's say, that the difference is that in my cell phone I have the applications that I think I will need or I will use, but there's nothing to do with what a teenager has in his or her smartphones, and the types of apps are so different. Nothing to do. So they use many more apps, and they use them for very different purposes. So that is the gap, and it's not even about amounts. No, it's not about quantity. Let's see. They don't read anything that doesn't come through the cell phone, or they read a little, let's say. They read, and if it's in the phone, the whole world of a teenager is in the cell phone, in the smartphone. Michelin guidebook, what is it? They don't even know that is a book, really. So they search through their cell phone. It's the greatest set of information in the world. It's an encyclopedia. So I don't even dare to remind you about some things that used to exist. But it's not just a phone, of course. So these machines, these little machines, they define their digital identity, the digital identity of adolescents and teenagers, and that is kind of real. It's very close, the two identities. And we, who do not belong to their generation, we are mere users of these devices. It's difficult for us to understand. Sometimes we are reluctant to actually, just introducing our identity into the device. It's scary sometimes. I work in the university, and I see things, and young people don't care about that. They're not afraid of it, and this defines also their concept of privacy and intimacy. That's defined by the mobile phone. There are parents, and myself also, that know their child much better because they could check their Facebook, and not because they eat together at home. Sometime the other day I just found out that my son actually fractured a rib. And I didn't even know. And then I asked him over dinner, "Oh, is that true? Did you have a fracture?" "Oh, yes," didn't I say. Well, so I read it on Facebook. Creativity, imagination, all these elements are redefining things, and they're being redefined themselves. I don't want to go any further along this path. I see familiar faces. Some people are even getting bored. Joan, come on. Don't get bored. Let's take a look at the nature of these changes. It's about ruptures. I took this from HubSpot. If we were to list the things that break now, that rupture, probably I wouldn't have time enough to describe this in the whole morning. But see, the greatest transformations in the world are triggered by inventions, novelties, technological innovations usually. It's about technology. It's about technological changes. Electricity, for instance, it changed so many things. We can say it changed the world. The cards, then the train, great difference. Aspirins, contraceptives, planes. These are inventions that have truly changed the world. But this, what I have in my hand right now, it's not one more invention that's come to change things. Of course, it changes our lives and our lifestyles, as the train did in the past and as the aspirin did at the time. It changed our life, our lifestyle. But the most important thing, at least for me, and I'm not the only one, it's that it changes intelligence. It's a brutal change in our intelligence because of that device. In other words, the human mind is changing, and that is so important. Let's see. An American analyst, probably you know him, Postman, he said in a famous book of his that's been translated into many languages, something like "Let's have fun until we die." Well, Postman he advocated back in the 80s something like that. He explained how the TV had changed the mindset in the people in America. He said that is the beginning of a series of changes that will affect the whole 20th and 21st century. He said, very easy, when the society was rural, and the people would just tell things to each other, which is the most important human faculty, the most appreciated thing in an individual. It was clear to him it was memory, okay? The memory. People who would memorize things, who would remember so many things, remember people that they can learn the Quran by heart. So memory is the most important, was the most important faculty. Now with the printing press, when not when it was invented, but when written paper was there out in the streets, which was then the most important thing, the most important mind faculty, not memory anymore. Memory was used just to, I don't know, maybe think of some old sayings, because the writing actually would transform things. When I'm able to read the word house, or table, okay, this is a table, but if it were a round-shaped table, it would still be a table, and if it was rectangular with 50 legs, it would still be a table. So those signs that we jot down to write down the word table, this is an abstraction. So that became then the most important faculty, and the most abstract disciplines, mathematics, linguistics, these are the fields of study that then in the school, in the university, flourished and became a priority then. And that has been our education to date. But Postman also used to say, what McLuhan used to say also, the means is the message. What changed was the means. It's not the same. What you say, what you write down, it's not the same. There is a change. You are favoring, one trait, and you are, setting another one aside. So you are sort of prioritizing one skill versus another one. Now, with these apps, with these applications, with the use of mobile telephony, which is full of augmented reality, and that is only the beginning, it will grow and grow. Well, in the educational systems, in the old educational systems, the ones that we've been abiding by, we tried to learn about organized knowledge-based systems. The teachers wanted to launch this message, to engrave this message in our minds. Today, the knowledge systems in the mobile devices are fragmented, are clearly fragmented. They're like a network. They come from here and there, like the net in itself. And that is the most important thing. On the other hand, what we used to value the most in the past was precision and moving forward slowly and reaching conclusions, and now it's very different. It's velocity, it's speed. I'm searching something, I can't find it. I go someplace else. I'll try something else. We need to go fast. We need to react quick. Emotional intelligence. This is the world of images. It's not the world of text. And images become first, then emotion. So the intelligence-based systems that are being promoted now, it was abstraction in the past, and now it would not only be abstraction, and there will be other forms, and that will replace it. It's not by chance that Gardner used to say that. He was the one to define it. He was the one who defined it. So, against this backdrop, there's certain fear, when it comes to changes. Mobile devices, the smartphone that we have today. There is like the astrolabius in the past. When you take a look at it, the astrolabium used to helped. Sorry, the astrolabe was used to get closer to the constellations and the stars, and you needed to have some previous knowledge to use the astrolabe. But here, well, it's not necessary anymore. You learn fast. People are fast learners. There's an important portion of the society that is scared of this change, scared of the smartphone. The schools that forbid the mobile phone. Most of you are parents, either parents or educators or teachers, and in some schools that is a fact. The mobile phone is forbidden. Well, the states and the governments have spent 30 years wanting to have, laptops in the school or computers in the school. Now the students have their laptop in the pocket, and now you forbid it. You wanted them to have a computer each, and they even pay for it. So what is the fear there? Let them have their computer in their pocket. Well, it's forbidden in many schools. Museums forbid the smartphone, and there's so many places where it is forbidden to use your smartphone. But that's not my point. My point is being afraid of the mobile phone. Let's analyze this fear. There's always a reason underlying that fear. It's about fear of replacement, because scholars. What is it useful for? I don't know. The Westphalia Peace Treaty. When was it signed? Well, if you are an expert, if you're a scholar, of course you know that. But anyone can search it now in 2 seconds. So anyone here will know in 2 seconds. It's this fear about being replaced, about being overcome. Other people will know more than I do. It's about losing control, not having everything under control anymore. And that is the fear. And that is why there's so much reluctance and people don't want to accept that. And there's fear of manipulation. Yes, of course. I mean, are you protected against this? No, you're not. But let's not spend any more time on this. You, of course, know about it already. But think about the world of culture and the potential uses there. I don't know if another speaker later on will cover that. But for 2 years, we've been analyzing all the apps available in the market that had something to do with cultural applications, especially museum apps, etc. And you are sort of disappointed when you do this analysis. It's disappointing because these apps, it's what happened with cinema in the beginning. Photography. Well, they wanted to do what the painting did, so they would take a picture of still nature, a picture. When photography, of course, opened up a new window of opportunities, is like cinema did, vis-a-vis theater. So there are museums that do very, very strange things. Let me explain that. With the mobile phones, I mean, with smart cells, they give you heterodox versions of the paintings in a German museum. I've seen that, the pictures, the paintings on their walls, and of course, if they are studied in schools and universities, etc., well, the comment is not academic, let's say, and you can read many, many different comments. And we've tested that in Catalan Museum in El Vendrell. A colleague of ours has just done this, an academic description of that painting and a subjective description of that painting, of the very same painting. The result, I mean, we cannot assert that subjection is preferred by the audience. We cannot just say that, not yet. But it seems so. The hints point in that direction. So the possibilities are more numerous than the fears, I should say. Let me move on quickly to the advantages, because I'm running out of time. For the young people that live in this world, in this era, it's a fascinating moment in history. For the older ones, it's complicated because we need to readapt. But for the youngsters, it's like the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Anyone could invent anything, so it's incredible. Now, anyone can invent anything. We can even, I don't know, produce it ourselves, manufacture it ourselves. In this world of augmented reality, not that long ago, I spoke with some colleagues here in the room. I spoke of thinking of QR codes, signaling for the city of Barcelona. QR codes, no one knew what it was, and now the cats in the city of Girona, they know what a QR code is, and they know how to do it themselves. So augmented reality, it won't take that long until the cats, the street cats in Girona, are able to do this. The advantages, the most important advantages behind this new world. Well, opportunity of working on our own products. We can model, we can shape our own products. We have the chance now to self-discover other forms of intelligence. People then find out that they can go about in the city themselves without any help, with the apps that they use, with the apps that they create sometimes. And as I said before, it's about building a new personal identity. It's about managing imagination. I don't want to deepen into the advantages because you are professionals in this field, so you of course know about the advantages of all this. It's not my job to tell you about that. There are so many, and probably you could produce a list each, and we could fill up the whole screen. Yet, how am I doing in terms of time? Can you please remind me? 5 more minutes. Okay, I'll speed up. Disadvantages. Go to the Wikipedia and you'll find anything. Wikis, well, they tell you anything. We can find virtually everything in Wikipedia. There are some things, though, that you won't find in the Wikipedia. Then, what happens with that that is not in Wikipedia? In the knowledge creation process, what is important, what matters, is not, how can I put it? It's not what you can easily find, or you can find a description. It's about the method that takes you to the knowledge. And the method is not in the Wikipedia yet. You have the description of the method, okay, but it's not useful. It's not enough, because it's about knowing how to park a car. You can explain to me how to park a car, but give me a car and I'll try it. Otherwise, What's the point about reading the description about how to park a car? And it's the same with methods. Methods need to be done. Methods need to be practiced. And this has no replacement. And that is the problem. That is the important problem. So these apps and this whole new world has a great deal of advantages, but there is a very important disadvantage. We won't solve it all with this. There are things that we won't solve, and museums and the field of culture that is based on material objects, this will not disappear. No mistake, because the analysis method will always be paramount, and without a method we will go nowhere. And this takes me to presenting a draft about what we consider an app should be like. It's like a hammer, okay? We see it like a hammer. You give a hammer to a carpenter and he will create a piece of furniture. You give him to a barbaric person and he will destroy whatever is in front of him. So it's about building and destroying. It's the same power. It's about how you use it. First thing that comes to mind, and probably you've thought about that when you first enter this new world, is, okay, this virtual reality deceives the brain. We are working on a campus where there's a group of weird people, basically psychologists, and they do simulations. They have like a cave for virtual reality. They do the simulations there because they want to fool the mind. That's the point. Because the human mind does not distinguish easily. Our brains do not distinguish easily. When you go to the movies and you're watching a scary film, even if you know it's fiction, you get startled sometimes. So it's about tricking the mind. We can trick the mind. So since the brain is a victim of this digital deceit, mobile telephony, what we are talking about right now, can also fool us. See this picture here on the screen? If you're experts in this room, you will easily find out that this is not true, that this does not exist, that this is a painting. It's computer generated, it's CG, and it, depicts a prehistoric setting. Let's leave it here. But that is a deceit. I'm going to show you another image. Here, this is another image. It's not that of a deceit, that much of a deceit, because immediately I see that there is a part of it that is white. And I understand. No, I mean, probably all of you will understand that that part's missing. You might think that the other part is still there, still standing, but no. So it's also computer generated. This is done through an app. It's an archaeological site, and here's a view facing the sea or facing the ground. But here, these white parts have been added to the image. The most important thing I was saying before is the method, is the how. Virtual deceit, we need the distinction. It is possible to take it very, very far, this virtual deceit, but it's not always desirable, not always to the limit. Let me end with just a remark. Our brain, is the cortical part of the brain, the part that allows for us to do this abstract thinking. It's about here, the head, and when there's damage here, we cannot interrelate, we can't read, we can write, depending on the damaged point, because, well, this capability has become impaired. But there is a part of the brain which is more internal, which is deeper, and that, well, takes us to risking. What takes someone to jumping with parachute, to do skydiving, these kinds of things. There is a part in the brain that also makes us be alert when we are scared or when there's something unforeseen. So this internal part of the brain stimulates also the interest, wanting to know more. Like in the past, we needed to open up new paths, literally new paths. Today, neuropsychologists, they know that there is this stimulus-based side of the brain. Well, there is a trigger in that part of the brain, which is dopamine. It's like the switch, right? It's the trigger. The more you practice, the more you like it. As in everything in life, it's not by chance. It's the same mechanism that can turn us into an alcoholic, or I don't know, go and become a drug addict. The trigger is the same. The mechanism is the same. Dopamine is the switch. It's the true switch. The apps, the applications have this capability. They can do this exactly the same. They are the triggers, and the more perfect they are, when the apps are really, really, really useful, that tell us not just what, but also how and why about that particular thing in question, then the mechanism will become strengthened and reinforced. So there are the two sides to the same coin. I think I will leave it here. I won't cover all my slides. So let me just finish by saying that the greatest problem that we have in this world of ours, this app world, and we need to table it because it's a problem that we will have to discuss and approach in the future. I'm referring to something that authors of the mathematics theory of communication defined already, and it's mathematically formulated, and of course I'm going to explain it in detail now. But what it tells us, this mathematical theory paradox in communication, is that the amount of information is inversely proportional to the understanding capabilities. So the more information, no, says the speaker, the more communication, the less information. I don't know if maybe I got it wrong, says the speaker. I don't know. I'm confused now. But you got the idea, right? The capability or incapability of going deeper into things, that is the challenge behind everything we do. Thank you very much. I'm sorry that I took longer than planned. Thank you.